All right, this is it, the moment we've all been waiting for. Okay, well, at least it's the moment I've been waiting for. Okay, it's time to take everything we've learned these past several videos and put it all together in a nice, tidy little bow. Today, we're gonna work through an 8-step checklist to make sure the story you are about to tell your students is 100% fire. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, so we have our blueprint, we've got our materials, and now we've got our tools. And now we're gonna learn how everything fits together in order. So we're gonna go through and then put everything together from start to finish. So wherever the story's from, whether it's a personal story or a biblical account or from history or even pure fiction, make sure that you take it through these 8 phases to ensure an extraordinary experience for your students every time. Now, as a quick note before we begin, you'll find that prayer is not actually a step in this process because we believe that prayer needs to be involved in every step of the process. So as you go through each part, make sure that you're asking God for unique wisdom, for creativity, for ideas for each part of the process. Number 1, push through the story. Regardless of how well you know the story, take some time to read it at least once, maybe twice, and then put it down, stand up and tell the story right then as best as you can. Make it all the way through. Don't worry if you forgot some parts. Then sit down, read it again, and then stand up and push through it again. And by pushing through, you're just reminding yourself that it doesn't have to be perfect the first time, and you're learning the whole arc of the story as a whole instead of pieces. Now, sometimes we tend to take one part and then work on it until it's memorized, and then we move on to the next part. But that approach actually is going to be better for you later on. First off, we want to get a feel of the whole story, and then we can work on it piece by piece. And getting the whole story is also going to be much more ideal if you're in a time crunch, because it's better to know the whole story fairly well than to know the beginning perfectly and then not know the rest at all. Step 2, envision the scene. As the storyteller, you've got to experience the story first. Your audience is only going to go where you've already been. In other words, you are the first person that you ever tell the story to. So take some time, close your eyes, and see the story, see the location, recreate the places and the people. You want to immerse yourself in the story on your own first. So look at their faces, see the expressions on their faces, mimic those expressions, hear their voices, feel what they would have felt. The best storytellers are just witnesses. They don't make things up. They're just expressing what it is that they see and hear and touch. So then when you become a part of the story, you don't have to remember a whole bunch of words. You're just reliving a scene and then passing that experience on to your audience. So you'll want to go through the story several times this way, writing down any new insights or descriptions or details that come to mind. This is also a good time to do a little research. If you're curious about something, just look it up. Doesn't have to be crazy, but if there's anything that you want to look up, now's the time to do it. Even if you're just Googling a picture of a location so you can kind of get your head in that location better, or if you're just looking for some important dates. Step 3, establish the story's central truth. Decide what you want the story to teach, and then make sure the message is clear throughout the story. It doesn't have to be spelled out every time it comes up, because kids are pretty smart, they'll figure it out. But making sure you know where it comes up will help ensure that there's enough exposure to nail it home. Number 4, eliminate needless details. With all of your imagination and your research and the content itself, you've probably got a lot of information. It might actually be too much information. So this is where you're going to refer back to your story plotting structure and make sure that you only keep what moves the story along or what clarifies the message. It might be a hard decision to make, but your job now is to keep refining down until you've got a solid collection of non-negotiable facts. Step 5, bring the story to life. Okay, this is where the fun really begins. So now it's time to clothe those facts with life. So as you run through the story this time, use every tool within reach and reason to make the story come alive. This is where you assign different voices to the characters, you collect descriptive phrases you want to use, make a costume, you gather props, you create a story map, you come up with foreshadowing phrases and place them in the right parts of the story. You want to think about facial expressions, large, clear hand gestures, locations, voice dynamics, movements, smells and textures, volunteers, everything. You want to chalk your story full of sensory details. This part here, this is where the magic happens. Number 6, add the lesson. Now that the story's pretty much set, don't forget to leave your students with a lesson. Know how it is you want to end, and if there's a commitment you want them to make sure that it's specific and that you ask them directly. And you can keep it pretty concise. Just tell them clearly how it is that you want them to respond. The best stories have lessons in them, so you don't want to leave your students hanging. Be sure to tell them why they went on this journey with you, and then invite them to take that next step. Number 7, plan your first words. So you've got basically everything you need. Now, you can't necessarily memorize everything, so it's best to focus on 3 main things. You can think of it kind of like an airplane flight. So you've got your takeoff, you've got the flight itself, and then you've got your landing. Now, you want to make sure that you've got a really strong takeoff. So you want something that arrests their attention immediately, something like a loud noise or a good question or jumping right into an exciting part of your story, but something that will get them involved right away. So you want to make sure that you memorize those opening words and then memorize which story point comes directly after so that it launches you right into the story. After that, obviously, you'll want to be very familiar with the main story points in your story, and then you want to have a strong landing by memorizing your ending. Some people haven't really thought about the end of their story, and so they just go and then they're playing circles and circles and circles because they don't know how to end. When you know your story points well, it also gives you huge flexibility, because if something comes up and you need to extend your story, well, then you just add in some of the details you took out before. Or if you have to end early, you'll be able to easily summarize the main points and still be able to land your plane correctly. Step number 8, practice. Now, practice seems pretty unglamorous, but it's the unsecret sauce of success. When we're amazed at the ease of a speaker giving an unscripted address, what we should actually be amazed at is how many times he's done it before, because it's a lot. Practice is going to keep us from simply explaining the story, which is boring. Plus, it will also rid us of the need to apologize or make confessions to the audience when we make a mistake. The truth is, confidence comes from experience, not planning. So be sure to plan a lot, but then make sure that you execute even more. And thus, your confidence will grow. Make sure you commit to telling the story well, even if it's currently outside of your comfort zone. And then you practice until your comfort zone grows. Here's the thing. If you haven't practiced enough, when the time comes and you've got to do that big hand motion, or you've got to change your voice, or you're going to do something extraordinary, you're actually going to chicken out and you're not going to go full throttle. You're going to hold back a little bit because you're not quite sure how it's going to go. And of course, you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of everyone. But when you hold back, when you don't go full out, you're actually going to rob the students of the full experience. But when you choose to practice enough, then your confidence grows and your commitment to doing whatever it takes to convey the story well is going to stay firm. And when the time comes for you to do that crazy, uncomfortable thing, you will do it and you'll go all out. You will have that big hand motion, or you will change your voice, or you will run around like a maniac, because you're doing what it takes to convey that story. And when you do that, then the students will receive that full experience, and coupled with the lesson that you're giving them, they will have something that will be stuck with them for a really long time. Now, armed with the know-how and tools of the trade, you are now ready to become the best storytelling version of yourself that you can be. And your story has now begun.